Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. We got Nick rejoining us here. We got Shaun and myself, of course. We're just hanging out for a nice chat on a Wednesday. If you haven't already, make sure you're signed up for the newsletter, the Reinforcement Loop. That way you can stay in the loop every week. And it's on the website. It's on all the things. Make sure you get over there. Check it out. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, hit them up in the comment section. We can engage those throughout the show. I'm excited. I'm so excited. I actually bypassed a complete section of my intro, which y'all should be doing right now. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Shaun's laughing in the background. I love it. This is a good start to the show. So let's get right into it. Topic of the day. Actually, before we even get that, I'm getting ahead of myself again. Nick, quick little rundown, 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff. Hit us up.
I'm Nick Falber. I'm a pro MMA fighter. Served in 3 RCR and 3 PPCLI, and currently reside in Lethbridge, Alberta.
Bam. I like it. Shaun, how's Mountains treating you?
Well, things are good out here. Looking forward to this conversation. Of course, it feels like we're just shaking Nick's hand like yesterday. How was it yesterday or just the day before? Anyway, it feels recent, that's for sure. Maybe he's all up in my grill. So we'll see where this conversation goes. It's going to be a gooder.
I think so as well. Well, we're going to get into the power of groups, group settings, the tribe, the team, the crew when you're around your guys. And I am stoked. So let's get some first thoughts. Nick, what were your first thoughts when you heard the topic?
When you told me the topic last night, I was pretty excited. I lost some sleep over it actually because the ideas started flowing. I think we're going to be able to take it down like a really nice rabbit hole. There's so many avenues to go with this topic, especially in the positive and the negatives. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into it.
I am as well. I don't know what's going on with my screens right now. They are going nuts. I'm not doing this, just so everybody knows. Shaun, what were your first thoughts?
Like Nick, I mean, it could go in all kinds of different directions, that's for sure. But one thing is for sure that I want to establish right from the get-go. Whenever so if we're talking specifically about Cardston, kind of a little mini retreat that wasn't planned, it just kind of came together as sort of a get-together that had some super legit people showing up, and it was a solid crew. And one thing that I've found is it doesn't matter whatever I've done in my life, my background, all of that nonsense, like forget about it. When I'm in those moments, like I feel like I barely belong there. And I'm certainly like appreciative of the people that are there. And it just so happened that while Nick was there, when he walked in, I was like, oh, here we go. Now I'm like 27th place in the pecking order. Like it's good to be around people who kind of not make you feel like you all of a sudden became minimized. But it's good to be around people who just have an air of sort of a professional way about them, that they can hold their space and not be a jerk and just make you feel like, oh, this guy's legit and I better step up my game. Whatever my game was, it's time to level up even more before I say my first word. So Nick is just one example of the many people who were there over that week. That it's not that I was checking myself to, I just got to do better because of this guy. The energy in the room almost obligated, at least from my perspective, everyone to kind of level up, just because it was the expectation of the energy in the room. So not my energy, but the group's energy had me feeling like it's time to freaking elevate, if that makes sense.
This makes perfect sense. And Dan Cameron on the Instagram side says, and many times those people are thinking the exact same thing when you're in that group. Everybody's kind of thinking like, oh, geez, I got to level up now. I put it out on one of the clips I put out through this week of the conversation we had last week. But why do you think it is? Why do you think that it feels good to be in groups that really drive you, that push you, that it's not so much that you're so far behind that they're a different group, but they're just, there's always this little bit of striving. Why do you think that we enjoy that so much, Nick? What do you think?
I think it's funny, like Shaun said that, because like it's always the same thing, right? Like that's how I felt coming into that room, right? It's we're like matching energies in a way, right? And now you're in a room, and everything you know that is going to be talked about is something you want to absorb, right? So you're just like, you have like a sponge mentality when you're in that setting, and it forces you to like to really dive into everything you say, everything you absorb, and every interaction is super meaningful, right? Like everything, like I think I sat at the table with Shaun for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours probably on Friday there. And it just flew by. Like it felt like 20 minutes. And then I was driving home and I felt just absolutely exhausted because everything we talked about was just, it levels you up in such a short amount of time that you can't get that kind of engagement when you're in rooms with, not necessarily have to be like the exact same mindset or, like-minded, but when you're in the room with people, that are going to elevate you, it just has like this lasting effect, right? And, I think we can all agree that, just sitting around at the couch together and just talking, especially when we did the podcast, it's just, it can shift your mentality like in an instant. It's really cool.
I had such a great time on that podcast, just being able to sit down and have that conversation with y'all. It was fantastic. Shaun, why do you think that we enjoy this so much?
Well, I know why I like it. I know why I love it. Because if I get in the right room with the right people, it's easy. It's easy to like see awesomeness like lickety split. What I don't like, and this is context, what I don't like is stepping into a room where I feel like it's going to be a quicksand hour, or it's the drudgery, and we got to work through the weather and all of the inane things that are, generally speaking, not that important in life. Like if you want to live a good life, a powerful life, a life at the front where you're helping people. So I'm not into the weather. I'm into like getting to the meat and potatoes of things pretty quickly. And if with the right crew, people who not mind their P's and Q's in the sense of they're careful not to offend. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about someone who is deliberate in the moment, intentional in the moment. They're actually in it with me in the moment. I can see it. And if I can see it, then we're on for the freak show ride, and let's see where it goes. Let's see how awesome both of us can become in the next few minutes. That's what I'm into. But the moment that I sit down at a table or a crew and it's rehashing the rehashing of the past, I get bored, because I do like to move the needle quickly for myself and for anyone who's around me. So the moment that I'm in the right room with a like almost a QRF mentality where whoever I'm sitting next to, if they're ready to move now and they're open-minded enough, open-hearted enough, and they want to like go somewhere in the conversation, I am so into it. In fact, I'm putting my foot to the floor on the freak train of the conversation to see how much both of us can learn, or all of us can learn in the moment. And listen, sometimes that gets a bit, it's a bit wild, but I think it takes a certain sense of velocity in a conversation, almost like that sort of things are flying past you super fast, like kind of Star Wars-ish. Like it needs to have enough velocity that people who are in the convo aren't losing sight of what's happening. They're not like starting to get bored and look out the window. If I'm talking to someone and they're like checking their phone or checking their watch or checking the birds out on the tree, I know it's time to bust a move, or not use my time more carefully, but maybe do it a different way. But if the pattern is that someone isn't like into having their hair set on fire in this conversation, what's it all about? So, like Nick, right from the get-go, it's not just kindred spirits. It's not about that, though there is some of that, of course. It's about recognizing that someone is just into becoming a better version of themselves. The moment that I know that, I know it's going to be a great afternoon or a great evening or a great morning.
This reminds me of kind of the nod that used to happen, especially in the field, right? When you both know that whatever this is, it's going to suck, but you could just kind of like, all right, let's do this, right? There's it's almost an urgency. It keeps coming up in my head that like we get to go down the rabbit hole. Like you really want to dive in? Okay, let's dive in, and then the energies can kind of align with one another, and you can start to really follow a conversation and start to create it in interesting, novel ways. And this happened to me in the last couple of days. I had a friend of mine who I linked up with from my Army days, who I haven't talked to in many, many years. And we just sat down and we started having a really great, interesting, thoughtful conversation where we went down a few different rabbit holes. And it was all intentionally based around developing each other. And that level of cooperation, I just don't see it as often with, for lack of a better term, randos, right? Like it's people that you just link up with. Do you think there's a way to bridge that gap between the people that we just meet, for instance, or just start a relationship with? Do you think there's I don't know, a hyperdrive, some way to bridge that gap a little bit faster than through years of experience and training together? Nick, what do you think?
I think that when it comes to like actually bridging the gap, especially when people haven't lived your circumstances or kind of have a shared understanding of something, it can be difficult, right? And I think one thing I've recognized, like even just across the board with, you know, like civilian friends compared to like military friends, right? It goes back to that whole nod aspect where it's like you can, like the military boys, you can just look at one another, give each other a look, and you just know, right? Versus like with my civilian friends, they're a little more, I don't know how to say this in a nice way, a little more like unrecognized with that kind of thing. Like I think there's something to be said about, like, especially in the group setting, suffering together and going through hardship together. And sometimes it's not even together. It's just knowing that you've been through the same like kind of pain train or the same kind of process, right? It's just like you talk to anyone who's been through battle school, you're not going to meet a single guy that goes like, I love battle school. It's like, no, it sucked. We all know it sucked, right? We don't like huffing with 150 pounds on our bodies, but we all did it, right? And we have that, we understand that feeling. Like we don't even have to talk about it. We don't have to talk about the stress fractures in our feet. We don't have to talk about any of that. We just know the pain that we went through, right? And there's something to be said about sharing that kind of journey together, right? And it's not just military. It can be across the board, like martial arts. When we're in the gym training with people, right? They're all doing it too, so they know what it's about, right? And there's like that's where that power of the group setting comes in, right? When you share moments together, I think it creates like this unspoken bond versus when you're trying to actually talk to someone and explain to like like for instance, I could sit there and explain for like half an hour to like a civilian friend or someone that hasn't gone through battle school what it's like when you're soaking wet carrying 150 pounds on your bodies for 30 kilometers through tank ruts in Meaford, but are they ever going to actually understand just like how bad that suffering is? No. It's the same thing like if you've never had cancer, if you've never had some sort of illness or this, like you can't compare all the time, right? So there's something to be said about that for sure.
I love it. Shaun, what do you think?
Yeah, I like the way Nick put that across, because really what we're talking about in simplistic terms is a construct, a mental construct, or a construct of someone's life. And so I look at Nick and I think, and it's easy to categorize, really easy. And I'm not saying that there isn't a requirement for further granularity. But I look at Nick and I think, bam, professional fighter, he fits into that little cubicle. Bam, he was in the military. Bam, he fits into that little cubicle. And so all the little cubicles that I can instantly put Nick in before I even shake his hand allows me to understand a lot about sort of the generalities of what makes up Nick. And then, like, we shake the hand and it's like that little nod. What's up, bro? And then we're straight into it, because we don't have to talk about the weather. We don't have to talk about the tank ruts, which, by the way, I forgot they do suck when they're frozen. Am I wrong?
They're terrible.
And
they're
so,
terrible.
like, it's just worst. Anyway, the idea being that these fast constructs that you can make in a room that I like to step into with people who are hard chargers, even if it's across several industries, if they're a hard charger, I can recognize quickly in a mental construct. I don't have to talk about it might rain this afternoon, because it's unimportant, nor do I have to talk about if they know how to tie their shoelaces, because I'm assuming, based on the mental construct in front of me, that they belong in this room. So it strips away all of the nonsense conversation, which, you've got to have some civil politeness. It's got to be, hey, how you doing? How was your trip? Was the drive, did it rain while it was driving? Grab a seat. Do you need a glass of water? Okay, let's get into it. Here we go. And so the initial moments in a group setting, you can have some niceties, but then why waste a pile of time hanging out in the weather zone when you can dive straight into what can I learn from you and what can you learn from me? But more importantly, what can we learn together? Because that's what I was doing with Nick when we were hanging out at the table, and we hung out for 2 days. That first day, it was me trying to get to know Nick at a really granular level, while at the same time, I was trying to use his life experiences, his actual professional experience in fighting, and kind of combine some of my own ideas with some of his ideas to see if either of us could create some new wisdom between the two of us. That's what I love doing. So it's to do that doesn't mean that you got to be a jerk or a goof or like strip away all of the niceties. There's a way to do it where it's still cool as hell for both people, but you're getting somewhere. You're getting somewhere, like you're diving into the future goodness to create that next level that is easy to understand. When Nick bounced on a Friday, when he was driving home, I'm sure his head was full of things. So was mine. Like, it's not a one-way highway, nor should it ever be. It's a two-way highway with me. I love learning with people who are in the freaking game. But my game has a velocity. It isn't quicksand velocity. So Nick was like in it right from the first second. And I love that, man. That's why we hung out at the table and time disappeared. That's why it's easy to hang out with a powerful group. And by powerful, I don't mean like you've got to be a professional mixed martial artist. I'm talking about you understand power somehow in your life through your chain of events or through the roles that you've lived in life. I mean, you've got to understand how to kind of wield at the table, as it were, rather than just sit back and quicksand in the information. It's in a powerful setting, there's a lot going on. And I do know this, that I love being in it and I love learning in it. And so I don't know. I've got lots to say on it, but I'll sum up there for a sec.
So I have an analogy. I want to play with this a little bit. And I had this image while you were talking, Shaun, of, to be able to sit at a table with a powerful group of friends or a powerful group of people, you have to be able to project your own power. And the image I had was of the Knights of the Round Table. So like the whole thing where they would draw their swords and they would put it out in front of them on that table, and it would be a representation of the power that they held presented to that table. And then the people around them would all do the same. And so there would be this shared understanding that we're all coming to the table with our own experiences, our own power to present to the table to everybody. And by each of us being able to do that without any sort of ego or any sort of like, well, my sword is bigger than your sword kind of system, it allows for a more fleshed out, flourished conversation, if that makes any sense. Nick, you got any thoughts on that?
I agree with everything you just said. That's kind of how actually I was picturing it as well, especially when we had everyone in the room on Saturday. I can see how quickly like it can become almost like overwhelming because you're like I've never felt so mentally exhausted driving home that night after just the shared conversation. And even like the next day, all of Sunday, I was just tired, right? And there's something to be said about, you know, uh, I think we've all been in situations or rooms where you can feel when the energy is getting sucked out of you versus when the energy is given to you, right? And you receive it in a positive manner instead of a negative manner, right? All those things apply. But I absorbed so much good energy, and it wasn't just insightful. Like all the conversations were like to some level very insightful, but it was also just the ability, like as soon as we were all in the room together, the military jokes start coming out, the picking and prodding, the poking, the like if you threw a random like normal Joe Blow off the street into that room with us, they'd be like, you guys hate each other. Right. But like it's not the case at all. Right. It's just that is how we are hardwired now. And that's how our interactions are based off of, you know, the shared things we have been through. And, you know, we have lots of different things we've been through. But collectively, when you're put into those situations, right, the energy that like I absorbed from it left me exhausted in a positive way, but like it can quickly almost become overwhelming in that aspect, right? So you have to know, right, at what point is your brain going to shut off, because it's just there's so much knowledge and energy being thrown at you. It can become a lot really quick.
I really like the idea of sharing energy rather than just absorbing it, because you can definitely go into a room and just have the life sucked out of you.
Yeah.
But when you go in and everybody is sharing the energy together, we're all kind of using from a shared bank of energy to have those types of conversations. It is phenomenal. And yeah, it's like it feels similar to having a really good workout or a really hard day's work and being just exhausted at the end of that day. The cognitive load is similar. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I do. I'm going to come back to the Knights of the Round Table analogy in a sec, but I just want to add to a little bit more to what Nick was saying. So I was in Cardston for nearly 10 days, and when I got home, I was like a half-wit. I mean, I was dumb as a brick. I just poured myself so much into that entire experience out there. Like I had given it my all on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects, all four pillars. Like I had zero in the tank by the time I got home. And I've been on life support ever since. I mean, I've been doing some things, you know, I've done a couple of podcasts. I've created a few things, whatever. I've run my normal program, but like at my higher level expectations of myself, of like I'm trying to push the pace in other things, like I was on life support, and I was having to make like simple decisions each day, like do I go for a ride or do I roast coffee? One day I decided, well, I can't roast coffee and ride, it's just going to be ride. And so I rode up into town, stopped at my local bike shop. They all looked at me and said, yay, the coffee guy's back. I was like, that ain't happening today. I've got nothing in the tank. Maybe tomorrow. Like 4 days later, I roasted them coffee, and someone in the store said, the co-owner, she said, it's a good thing I didn't see you on the sidewalk over the last few days, or you're going to get it. Like I wanted my coffee. And so like, I just didn't have it in me. I was drained. And hilariously enough, I said to my wife yesterday, man, I'm still sizzling from that week. And Seb dropped me a message earlier today, and he said like he's like dumb as a brick we're both dumb as a brick. When am I going to get my life back? And my wife said to me, because she knows how to push my buttons. She said, "Feels good, doesn't it?" I was like, "What? How do you even respond to that? You can't get angry with that. It just irks me that she's right. It does feel good. It feels good to push the pace so hard that you go half blind. And then you get home, and then you wait till the focus to snap in over the next few days, and presto changeo, you're seeing the world in a different way. And so, like, you can use all of the analogies that you want on how you see clearer, or how you see brighter, or how you see further, or how you see deeper. That's a whole different conversation. But the reality is, as far as I'm concerned, it works for me and it works for everyone else. That if you push a bonkers pace until you're kind of half blind, over the next few days, your vision will change for the better. Back to the analogy on the Knights of the Round Table. I felt the same way. And here's the interesting aspect. So I'm going to chuck it back to you guys. When you draw that sword out and put it down on the table, it doesn't matter whether it's a rusty sword, and it doesn't matter if it's a sparkly, shiny sword. What does matter is the person who pulled the sword out, are they legit? Like, what's their rep? Like, are they a person who takes care of business, or are they a person who has the shiniest sword that never gets drawn? You know what I'm saying? And so that is one aspect of that conversation. You can be at a table and appear to be the knight in shining armor next to the dude who's in the rusty armor, but neither one of those tells the full story as to who's like kicking that arse. And then the second aspect to the Knights of the Round Table, to throw back at you guys, is you draw your sword out, you put it down on the table, and then some knights will be able to sit down and chillax, and some will sit down and they've never like put their shield down, their mental shield. They're still carrying their shield while their sword's in front of them, but every other knight has got the shield laying down at the floor at the feet. And so there's a couple of different ways to take that combo. I'm throwing it right back at you guys.
Ooh, Nick, what do you think?
Shaun gave me like an overload of webs that I want to cast, and now I'm trying to figure out which way I want to navigate it. I think, especially in a group setting, it's very. I think we're just systematically hardwired to put up our shield, no matter where we are, right? Just because of, just as in my case, usually any room that I enter, I'm always got a shield up just in case, right? Versus as soon as I walked into that room with you guys, that shield was left at the door, didn't even make it to the table, right? I think there's something to be said about when you're walking into a situation or a room that you know is going to elevate you in a positive way, or allow you to just put those barriers down. It's that seeking of higher elevation, right? Mentally. As far as the sword analogy goes, I love that, because it's, for me, I always, you could look at it in the sense of, well, his sword is shinier, so is he more disciplined, likes to maintain it, this, and this. Or you look at the rusty sword and you go, you've been through some wars. I want to hear your story. You might not have cleaned your blade, but maybe that's part of the story, right?
This is it's really interesting too, because I was thinking with the shield analogy, you have to be vulnerable in the group in order to be able to grow in that in a direct proportional system, right? So like if I saw lots of dudes do this overseas, especially, you just wear your armor basically all the time, and then people would start getting into but you get, sorry, my brain's kind of all over the place right now with this, but basically what it comes down to is our ability to be vulnerable in a group setting is directly proportional to the amount that we can grow in that group setting. The problem is that whether or not we want to accept the barbs, if we want to accept the jabs, if we want to accept the pushes from that group around us. I mean, talked about this on a clip as well when Shaun and Ash were on either side of me, and there was some intensity going on there. And to be vulnerable in that moment and go, you know what? Okay. What I believe could be wrong in this moment, what they are so adamant about, they could be very right about. How do I absorb that? How do I engage that? And without being able to leave the shield at the door, I could have been defensive. I could have left. I could have not learned a single thing from that interaction, but I learned quite a bit. Shaun, what do you think?
Yeah, you handle that moment like a champ, like a knight in shining armor to some degree. I mean, yeah, Ash and I were a handful, and it wasn't like we gathered in the corner in the shadows, like giggling to each other, planning that whole thing. That was just like that organically occurred, and without a great tactical or strategic initiative several days before. These things happen with the right people in the right setting. If the moment allows for it, things happen. And if the person is open to the thing happening, like you were, Chance, well, presto changeo, here you are, different, better person. And what did it cost you? Frickin' nothing. It cost you being in the moment, sort of feeling your feels, doing your thing, making choices, and then processing it after the fact. That it might have felt like a 3-ticket ride, but you didn't have to spend a penny to go on the ride. And
Yep.
so what currency did you have to spend, though, to be in that moment? In my opinion, there is some currency spent. It's not dollars spent. It's not the price of gas to get there. It's the currency that you've had to pay in your life to be able to get the invite into the room. Like, you're just not getting in the room if you suck. I mean, if you're a jackass, good luck. You could have $1 billion and I'd walk on my heel the other direction. That's the way it is. So I think there's a currency to be paid to get into the room. That currency is a lot of different things. It's not just service. It's not just how you served your service. It's not just what you represent now, in the past, and in the future. It's a complex currency scale, I believe, if you start thinking about the granularity of it. And if we just look at Nick as the example, I mean, I didn't know Nick 3 years ago. And so how is it that, like, to some degree, he's and I'm going to say it, it's going to sound dumb, but generally he's kind of in an inner circle now. And that, for me in my life, that doesn't happen easy and it doesn't happen fast. I usually have to keep my eye on someone for quite a long time and kind of start making some decisions on that currency basis, not a transactional where he's going to owe me or I owe him. I'm looking at the thing called Nick, and I'm making decisions as to how fast I will kind of accept him into my life, into that more inner circle, so that I can learn as much from him and he can learn as much from me, so that for whatever reason that I feel, my investment of time with Nick, not into Nick, but with Nick, I feel is going to provide returns for, like, a lot of people. Returns that he may not even understand and I may not understand, but like the goodness of the time that we spent together, I feel is going to pay dividends in the future. And so that may be him, like, kicking some ass on a big stage, having a microphone in his grill, all the cameras and spotlights on him, and he just says something that is so sweet, so choice, so magical that it's like, yes, there it is. Payback. And not payback to me, but payback for kind of like a mankind, as it were. And so it's a large conversation with a lot of complexity to it. And I don't think there's just a simple case of, there's this guy called Nick, I think he's going to be okay. There's more to it than that. And so I'm going to throw it back to you guys and see what you think.
Go for it, Nick.
So going back to the whole leaving the shield at the door thing, as soon as I did that with Shaun and, like, coming into that room, Seb was a little busy. And so when Shaun and I started engaging, one thing, like, I notice across the board with a lot of people is sometimes they're not good with positive criticism, right? Or hearing what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. So, and that's always been a thing, like, throughout my past that I've had to identify is what do I need to hear today, right? What do I need someone to throw at me to challenge me? I think people get too comfortable with the whole principle of what they want to hear and to feel good or look good or this or that. As soon as you're in front of someone that you know is going to elevate you, there's no bullshit. And it's straight to the point. And especially in that room, like you're never, there's no yes men, right? There's no yes men just, hyping you up for no reason. It's clear cut. And if you're wrong, you're going to be told you're wrong, right? And a lot of people aren't used to that. And I think just as a whole, and not just in the situation like where we were all together, but I think across the board, we've all been in martial arts gyms. And and one common factor I see a lot with, especially like, for instance, just in the fight community, is you get yes men in your corner that will basically build you up mentally in a way that isn't actually where you're at, right? And for me, like just personally, I'm not looking for that yes men mentality. I'm looking for that challenge where it's like for instance, one thing like I recognize with like my coach is I'll say, okay, I want to do this fight or I want this opponent. He doesn't look at me and says, oh yeah, you can beat him for sure. He's like, that's going to be a hard fight, but we should do it because it's going to make you level up. It's going to force you to be harder. It's going to force you to focus on those minute wins every day way harder than if you just, for instance, if you find an easier opponent and you're not as disciplined or not as you're not as thoughtful in your day-to-day interactions or, little goals or whatever it might be. There's something to be said around all of it, but I could probably ramble on this for like at least 2 hours. So
I'll jump in here, which is I think this is beautiful where you guys are going, and it plays back into Shaun's concept of currency. And I wanted to play with this a little bit too, because I think that the currency is blood, sweat, and tears for to enter the room, the cost of the ticket, the cost of the seat, to be able to get into a room like that where you can put down your shield and like fully engage in both positive and negative feedback and getting told when you're completely out to lunch or when you're not, or when people will listen to you and have to go, I'm gonna have to look that up, or I'm gonna have to go research that, or I'm gonna have to develop myself just to get to where you're at in that kind of level. It's a beautiful thing, but that's the currency in my mind. Blood, sweat, and tears. You have to be willing to put in the effort long before you even know that room exists, just to be able to pay your seat there. And then you got to be able to step up to the realm and be like, okay, I'll take whatever you guys can throw at me, and we're going to figure it out in the moment. What do you guys think, Shaun?
I agree. There has to be currency paid. And as you said, blood, sweat, and tears is a great currency. Now, here's the trick. And it's not like I'm trying to put anyone off right now. I'm just going to call it the way I see it. And it's not mean-spirited. I'm not giving myself a casual excuse like, this is just the way it is. This is my observation. Lots of people have paid the blood, sweat, and tears currency. Maybe it was a long time ago. That doesn't give you the hallway pass to just step into any room at any time that you want based on a long time ago blood, sweat, and tears moment. That's a thank you for your service, for sure. I'll always respect that. But it doesn't become an eternal hallway pass that you can put the sacrifice in and then let a couple of decades slide by and then feel like you can step into any room you want based on that 20 years ago blood, sweat, and tears. I think there has to be a sense of you're in the game now, currently, to step into that room. And by the way, the currency that was paid a long time ago, that you stopped paying a long time ago, you can start that again like lickety split. You could start that yesterday. You could start that while you're listening to this, just by listening carefully and thinking how you're going to change your life in the immediate future. The currency has to be always paid. It's not a one and doneer. There has to be consistency to that payment. Otherwise, it's a promissory note. You do something in the past, and then that note gets you into every room for the rest of your life without any work. That is not the way. The consistency of effort is the way. And so, to get through the door, I believe it takes blood, sweat, and tears on a consistent basis. And then phase 2, now you're in the door. I think you still got to keep earning once you're in the door. You sit down at the table, there is no hallway pass. You're earning in that moment as well. And by the way, there may be blood if Nick's there. There may be sweat and tears. And so, you've got to earn in the moment as well, because there's nothing more disappointing for me to identify someone who's going to be great at any table in the near future, and then they step in and don't earn in the moment. They kind of sit down and just absorb rather than they're in the game in that moment. You've got to earn at the table, not just show up to the table. What do you guys think?
Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, all I can keep thinking about, as Shaun was saying all of that, is rent is due, right? And it's one of my favorite quotes. Rent is due every day, right? I think, yeah. Sorry, I'm stuck on the rent is due.
All good. Well, let me hit on that then, because this, what kicked into my head is what Shaun said earlier, is that as a group, we need to invest in each other, right? And so if I have to pay my blood, sweat, and tears daily to get the invite into the room, well, now I had to pay all my money, all my currency to get in. Now I need to earn some so that I can invest it back into the group itself. And that's where all the gold comes from. That's where all of the return comes from, is that once we all start to pool, as we're all still earning every day, in that conversation, let's say, while we were sitting around, we got the podcast set up, we were all bought into that situation. We were all investing in that situation. We were all earning in that situation so that we could all gain from the return, which is afterwards. And so there's a really great monetary analogy to this, is that it takes money to get to the table, but then it also takes money to invest in the table. I mean, you can't walk into a high roller poker table and sit down and be like, okay, well, I paid the $1 million to get in, but I'm not going to spend any money here. That's just silly. It's not going to happen, right? Shaun, you got any thoughts?
That's a great example with the high stakes poker table, because there are some stakes at hand, by the way. It's not like if you've got $1 million, you get to show up. Well, if you've got $1 million, you might not be that interesting. So you've got to kind of belong in the room to some degree, no matter how much money you've got. And then when you bought your way in through blood, sweat, and tears, now you sit down. Now imagine this: you're at your first world championship poker game. You've bought in. You've got all the chips in front of you, and then you play like an idiot. I mean, like an idiot, like you're clueless. You're making all the wrong moves. You're now irritating the table. The table's looking at your randomized, chaotic nonsense, and they're thinking, this dude's never getting invited back. That's the way it goes. I mean, you can dream your dream of getting at whatever table, not my table, not Nick's table, not Chance's table, your table, whatever your table is, you can dream that dream. Blood, sweat, and tears your way to it. Sit down and then blow it all by just not playing it right, not reading the room, not understanding how you got there, why you're sitting there, and whether you'll be back again. Because life shouldn't be a one and doneer. Like, if you want to step into good rooms, good poker tables, you got to play it right a bunch of times, and so that you establish a reputation to get invited back. So life is not a one and doneer as far as I'm concerned. Even your best performance isn't enough. You've got to like be prepared to stack up another best performance after that. What do you guys think?
I think it's fantastic because well, Little Woodworks jumped on here from the Instagram side, said, "Wait, has Shaun seen me gamble?" So I think maybe somebody had seen it. But on the YouTube side, KH jumped in here. He said that it's the demonstration of how you live your life is the interest paid, and I think that is the key. It's the demonstration of how you live your life. But I was thinking about this. Can't remember what movie it's from. It was from the 90s and it was a spoof movie, but the guy sat down at a baccarat table and thought he was playing poker. And like that's what I like. You got to know the game you're playing. You got to know the room you're in. You got to belong there. You got to be able to do these things. But the poker table is really interesting too because you're right. If you go there and you screw up and you start pissing off the other contestants, they're going to see you as a mark, and then you're going to get hunted rather than, like you're jumping in to a pool of sharks and wearing steak pants. Like you're just asking for it at that point. And we've seen demonstrations of this, right? We've seen it throughout time. You look at people who got a shot too early, too inexperienced, and then they go against a pro contender in a fight or something like that, and they just get smashed. Or someone lets their ego take them beyond what they're capable of, and they get smashed. Or there was a racer that did it at one point. But there's hundreds of examples we can look at through history where, to Sean's point, they showed up, they paid the blood, sweat, and tears to get there, and then botched it on the day. And it's bad. What do you got, Nick?
I feel attacked, but I'm probably the best demonstration of that. I could sit there as you were saying all that. I just think back to I think back to my pro debut, and not just my pro debut, my actual amateur debut. So both my amateur and pro debut, I lost. Those are the only two fights I've ever lost, and my first amateur loss was in front of like 4,000 or 5,000 people at COP, like hockey arena for Hard Knocks. Like, I can't make this shit up. It's like I got choked out in front of a hockey arena of people, and I've never been the center of attention like that in my entire life. Then I look at my pro debut. Granted, I had a lot of like psychological factors in the background and a lot of things weighing on me, but I paid the blood, sweat, and tears to get there. I did my fight camp. That was 5 months after my last surgery for my tumor, and I did full rehab, full physio. I recovered and did a full fight camp within 5 months. I put in the blood, sweat, and tears, and then I lost to a guy I know for a fact that I am a higher skill level than. And it was all just because of small little details and small little specks in the timeline that just edged me wrong. And it doesn't matter, and I did everything. As far as the fight camp, as far as the actual fighter process goes, I did everything correct. Everything. When it comes to water intake, food, diet, sleep, everything, training, everything was dialed in. But that's not always going to get you the win. However, that loss created the greatest win I could have ever asked for, right? And it took me a while to get there. I had a guy back out the day of the fight in September, but then I told my coach, I was like, I want to let people know. People are looking at me like I'm the sandbag right now. And I'm like, that's not okay, because that's not who I am. And he got me like the best gym in Canada is Niagara Top Team. And he got me one of their like very high level lightweights, up and coming like prospects that is a killer. And I was like, perfect, let's do it. The odds of winning, I think it was like on Tapology, it was like 92% in his favor. And I didn't even look. So before the fight, I think I was on the airplane flying to Toronto for that fight. And I remember I had like a thought. I was like, I wonder what the odds are, like on like a betting site or whatever for this fight. Like I like just genuinely because of the gym he trained out of, I was like, I wonder what the betting odds are, right? And I knew in my heart that it was probably like something ridiculous, like especially after my first loss. Like I was like, it's probably like 95%. And then all I could think in my head was like, wait till I can't swear on here, dang. Wait till I effing show you guys what's coming. And I did. And we got nominated for Fight of the Year, and it was an absolute bloodbath. And to this day, I think, like, and I'm not saying this out of my own gratitude for myself, but that's still one of my favorite fights of all the UFC fights I've watched. I love rewatching that fight because it is just barbaric. It is what, in my opinion, an MMA fight should be. And that's how I sell myself. That's who I know I am, and that's how I believe I fight, and that's how I believe I am spirited, is this intense, barbaric fighter. That is what I wanted to present, right? But systematically, right, we do everything right leading up to an event, whether it's, let's say, a pro MMA fight, or even coming to Seb's farm, right, for the retreat. It's just, no matter how much you prepare for it, right, circumstances can change in a split second, right? Whatever it might be, right?
Well, that's the thing, is that all the preparation in the world just gets you in the door. Then you got
Exactly.
then you got to invest from there. Shaun, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm glad that Nick brought that up because it is critical to the, as we're using the poker table analogy. I mean, Nick bet on himself. He bet against the odds. And that's kind of what you got to do at some tables. You might not feel like your 3% chance of winning is enough to win, but there you are at the table. So play your hand the best way that you can. Go all in. Or like step up from the table and walk out the door and never look backwards and see how that plays out for you. Look for another room, another table, another whatever. But the problem with that is when you step up from that table and turn your back on it, you'll never know where it could have taken you. You'll never know. Like Nick bet on himself, hit TO, did his thing. He knows now. There's no guessing. And by the way, win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. The outcome actually isn't that important as to whether he won or not. What is important is he knows that he bet on himself, played it out, saw it come to its completion, and now he can do that to anything. And I'll say this, that when Nick stepped through that door in Cardston for the first time, we shook hands. One of the reasons that we got to sort of like a pretty fast velocity pretty quickly is because the moment that I shook his hand and looked him in the eyes, you can see that the dude has been in it. Like he's paid his dues. And he's a guy who has, he's got a certain sort of confidence from the failures that he's had to face in his past. And this ties directly into someone who hit me up yesterday asking about, hey, Shaun, I've been following you for quite a while, but have you guys ever done a podcast on failure? And I thought, man, did we fail to do a podcast on failure? But I mean, I'm so used to talking about how much I've failed. I've failed so much that I've said you'd be hard pressed to catch up to all my failures. Even if you turn it into your new sport, I don't think you'll ever surpass my failure rate. I love failing, man. I actively pursue it now. Like I learn a lot from it. Failure is good. And so I described to him a couple of instances where I'd failed like miserably. And, I think I've talked about that in the past, but I think it's important that the fuller story is Nick got on a plane betting for himself. He landed in TO. He kicked that ass. But if he would have had his ass kicked, c'est la vie. The failures, big deal. He'd have shown up like better for it at the next one. And so whether it was a fight or whether it was a date or whether it was a new work opportunity or whether it was whatever, Nick has learned enough in his life through wins and losses that he knows how to play that game. And the moment that you shake his hand, you know it. You can feel it. You can see it in his eyes. You can see it in his soul. And that is not common nowadays. It's not as common as it could be, I'll say that. And so when a confident young man, it's because I'm freaking old. When a confident young dude steps in the door, I've got all the time for it if I know that it's built on a strong foundation of not fake-a-roni stuff. Nick's been in the game. You can see it and feel it the moment that you're in his presence, and I love that.
I think this plays into, back to what we're talking about, the power of a group setting, because if you have a really good group behind you, that's what drives you to that next bound, that next sequence, that next fight, that next whatever it is. Because if you don't have a good group around you, that first major failure can derail your entire life and just off to one side, right? And so when you have a really solid crew of people around, you got a good coach, you got a good crew of friends, you got deep connections, those types of roots, those hold strong in the storms, right? Like they're the things that keep you centered and balanced when the world is coming at you. And it's such a great thing to be within these groups, but you have to pay the dues to get there. As we've been saying throughout this whole thing, is that it takes some facing the storm in and of itself before you can sit at the table with the other sailors who have sat through that same storm. Right? So you gotta face up to it a little bit on your own. Now we are just about at an hour, so let's get some final thoughts on this, because I think this has been a really great conversation, and I'm liking where we went with this. Nick, any last thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain?
Yeah, there's a few things. When we talk about failure, I think in almost most of the podcasts like I listen to, especially just on the collective, I think for the most part, I've recognized that we talk about failure more often than not, because I think when you're surrounded by the people that you should be surrounded with, it's almost like a comfortability to share those failures, versus I think nowadays, like Shaun was saying, most people don't want people to know if they have failed, right? Whether, like, it could be as simple as like you're in grade 6 and you fail a math test, and then the kid beside you look over and he's got, an A+, and you're just like, shit, I got an F, right? And like, you don't want him to see it. You don't want people to see your failure. But the thing is, like, I drive this into like my teen program I run at the gym. Like, I tell my kids every day, I'm like, fail as much as you can in the gym. Like, it doesn't matter. Just let that guy armbar you. Let that guy put you in a triangle. Feel how that feels. Find your way out. And if you have to tap, that's okay. But it might take 100 times. It might take 1,000 times. Everyone figures it out faster than others. But eventually you're going to find that door to get out.
Yeah, 100%. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Yeah, the importance of failure is indisputable. And I can look back at this conversation. I've seen moments where I failed to put across a point very well, or failed to take it in a direction that I think would have been more useful to all of us. And so it's not just the grand failures. It's recognizing the missed opportunities in a conversation. To some degree, that's a failure. But then if you recognize it, it's an opportunity to do it better next time. And so that's literally how we've run this podcast. I mean, that first year was a freak show, a gong show. It was a show, all right. But we've every single time we recognize when we've done it poorly and how to do it better. And that's that after action report that we always do in the green room. After we're concluded a live podcast, we're always conversing with each other with a bit of a group mind, a collective mind in that green room, to figure out, okay, let's just add 1% today. Let's shoot for 3% tomorrow. We're always striving to address the failures, even the most minuscule failures, not give ourselves a moment to just accept backsliding. That is pretty critical to being in a good room. I always like to see someone show up who's in the game, but more importantly, I like to see them stay in the game rather than backsliding out of it. So, food for thought.
Well, I went 59 minutes without talking about jiu-jitsu, even though there were lots of opportunities, but now I'm going to talk about it. I did pretty good, but I just have to get this point across. When you're at the gym and you're on the mats, there are people that will do the class and then they will leave. And they can gain a lot of stuff out of that. That's great. But then there are people that will stay for the class and then they'll stay after class and they'll discuss particular points about either they'll ask people, hey man, how did you get that on me? Or how could I? And they just start to try to get that last little bit of information right before they leave, whether they stay and roll or whatever after that, it's not a big deal. But that little ask at the end, how could I have done that better? Where did you get that armbar on me? Where did you see it from the first place? All those things, right? That's the reinvestment. That's the blood, sweat, and tears took you to the class. You did the thing. Now you want to reinvest it. How do you reinvest it? Well, you figure out where you did it wrong, and then you start working forward. And to the point about failure, we've done 2 shows on failure. We did fear of failure, and we did fear and failure. But we haven't done any specifically on failure, which is coming up soon. We're doing one on abject failure, like complete, total, mind-blowing, the world is ending kind of failure. So that'll be a fun episode as well. And I can't wait to get into it. But until then, we all have to continue to learn, build, and grow. We'll see y'all next week. Chimo.
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 Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.